Good afternoon, everyone. I hope everyone is doing good on today. In the past previous weeks, we've been talking about how our five senses can play a huge role in the struggles that we face today. And today, the topic is called Touchy. Previously, we talked about, the sight of what we see and, what we hear and etc. How they can affect our walk with God. So this scripture I heard a lot when I first came into Church of God the Bibleway. It's 1 Corinthians 7 verse 1 through 2. It says, "Now concerning the things whereof ye wrote unto me, it is good for a man not to touch a woman. Nevertheless, to avoid fornication, let every man have his own wife, and let every woman have her own husband." So I always heard, it's not good for a man to touch a woman. That was pretty popular. But, it's not, especially when you're trying to be saved. But I really didn't look at the depth of everything. Okay, so thinking about touch, when you touch something, you think it's just your hands doing something. I never really, looked at the spiritual concept behind a lot of things because when I was out there in the world, I didn't think about spiritual things. But it's like now, coming into the church, I see more and, now I know that a lot of things that I did while I was in the world, it was things spiritual happening behind it, but I was blind to it. So now knowing that God's presence can be provoked by touch. And in Matthew chapter 18 and verse 19, I'm going to read that. And it reads, "Again I say unto you, that if two of you shall agree on earth as touching anything that they shall ask, and it shall be done for them of my Father which is in heaven." So knowing that, healing can take place with just touching, that's very powerful. And to know that we can bring down powers, just by touching, so we don't really think about touching when we're not, walking in the spirit. You're not really, your flesh is more higher, I'll say. Okay, so when I first got saved, I remember the story about the woman with the issue of blood stood out to me, but I never really focused on her touching God's garment, Jesus' garment. I focused on her faith. Every time I heard about the woman with the issue of blood, her faith stood out to me. But now looking that she had so much faith, but it was just a touch, one touch. She touched Jesus' garment, and how powerful, like she was healed by that. You get what I'm saying? But I never really focused on that. So reading now, I'm just like, wow. So her touch was so powerful that when she touched Jesus, virtue left out of Jesus. So I was just like, wow, just by touching, nothing else. So by her believing and just touching Jesus, she was able to receive something, and something left out of Jesus. Okay, so it is important for us women, to be aware of certain things, I'll say. I can vouch for myself now. I can speak for myself. But I didn't really look at things how they are now. But when I was in the world, it was just like, okay, I'm on my cycle, or period. Us women, we have those. But when I was in the world, it just looked at, that's just something as what us women have. That's natural. It is natural. It is in our nature to have a period. But it is important for us women to know that it is not a crime, to go out in public places and everything like that when you're on your period. But we have to realize that we are very vulnerable during those times, and how our hormones respond differently from when we're not, during that time period. Any other time, we're fine. But during this time, our hormones act a little different. They're a little strange, and many women can vouch for that. Our bodies go through changes, and in that particular time of having a period is good, to kind of separate ourselves. I'm going to read a page out of The Struggle is Real that stood out to me. It says, when a woman is bleeding, God shuts her out because of this. Have you ever thought to think why a woman calls her cycle a period? It is called a period because she was to be shut out for a period of time. During this time frame, if she touched anything, it was deemed unclean. So it was, and also I'm going to read the next sentence, I'm sorry. They understood that the woman's cycle carried a spiritual and natural effects. One touch from the woman with the issue of blood caused Jesus' virtue to go into her. So, yes, it's a natural, but within this natural time, something spiritual can go on. So I was reading that and I was like, wow, touching go far beyond what, you'll think on a regular. So not only can gifts be stirred up, flesh can be stirred up as well. Through touching, virtue can be it can be transformed, I'll say, and transported, I'll say. So if that can happen, we can lay hands and, the sick can be healed, and we can, like, just by touching, we can bring down power. So it's just like, okay, if we can do all those spiritual things, then don't you think that with our natural life, our natural walk, if we touch certain things or let certain things touch us, can it affect us spiritually? Can it affect the struggles that we already had in ourselves? Okay, so just like in 1 Corinthians chapter 7, when it said it is not good for a man to touch a woman, so can we think about, okay, so if the word of God says that, then if it's not good for a man to touch a woman, in this time frame when I'm on my cycle, I know my hormones and I feel this type of way at this particular time in my life. Maybe it's not good if I go around somebody that I already have feelings for, or someone that I like, because although you feel like you can contain yourself, do not put any confidence in your flesh. And of course, you're on your cycle, so you're like, I'll never do that. Of course, it's disgusting for one, but it's more so, I'll say, at the end of the day, your hormones act differently. You feel some type of way. So soon you can stir up something in you without even knowing. So after you come off your cycle, you may still feel that way because, our hormones don't snap right back, So knowing that through touching, virtue, can go through one another, and also ministry can be ordained and much more. So being that my gifts can be stirred up, I don't want my flesh to be stirred up inside of me, because at the end of the day, we know that no good thing dwelleth in us. So we trying to, stay saved. So we need to take heed to the things that can keep us. So physical touch can be felt in other parts of the body. Like, okay, for instance, one may touch one part of your body and it affects other areas. So how can I relate this? I'll say, just with my experience, when I was in high school, I was in a relationship, I dated. And although we around certain people, after texting a person for an amount of time and, flirting and, going through this whole phase, I can say to myself that even though it was a simple hug, that saying, butterflies, I just got some butterflies, my stomach got a little light or something like that, or I felt like this sensation flow through my body. Well, that was a chemical that was released. So, it was a feeling that was just by a touch. Even though he didn't touch me in any of my private areas, a simple hug woke up something else. It wasn't, really strong, but it made me feel some type of way. Okay, so physical touch can be felt in, certain parts of your body that has not been touched. So being that virtue can go into people from just a touch, and sometimes it doesn't have to be, one person can only recognize it. Sometimes it don't have to take two people to recognize the touch, because once again, in the example that I used, that when I was in high school, being in a relationship, and he touched me, I may not have said, "Oh, you made me feel some type of way." It was more so I felt that way and I did not say anything. So yes, virtue can go, just from a touch, and one person can be aware of it and the other person doesn't really have to recognize it. That just goes on with people liking one another. I may like somebody but may not show it. You may make me feel some type of way. You get what I'm saying? Like, just be real, because that happens. So I'm going to read page 53, something out of 53. Give me one moment as I turn to it. So this stood out to me as well. It says, when the virtue of Jesus left and entered her body, Jesus was in search of this woman, and he went looking for her. Many of our youth are touching people in ways they should not sexually, and they miss things within themselves. They have placed their virtue in other people and don't feel complete until they are with the person whom they allow to receive their virtue. Now, I'm going to reread that because, sometimes it can go over our heads, and we can sometimes put ourselves in places and feel like we don't know how we got there, but by the little things that we overlook be the reason why we got there. So many of our youth, and I'm talking to myself as well, many of our youth are touching people in ways they should not sexually, and they miss the things within themselves. They have placed their virtue in other people and don't feel complete until they are with the person whom they allow to receive their virtue. So, I was not always saved, so I experienced sex before I got saved. And I can truly say that when I lost my virginity, it was a different feeling. And I always say this, when I was out there young and never had sex in my life, and it was just more so that puppy love. We called it puppy love. And I didn't know, but when I lost my virginity, I felt something left. And I've been saying that for the years, and I always testify, I felt something leave out of me. And reading The Struggle Is Real, I now understand that when I lost my virginity, I was already attached to this person with my emotions. But when I lost my virginity, I was so attached to him already that he took a piece of me. And for years, I did not understand why I couldn't leave him alone, and why I felt so crazy about him, and because he had a piece of me. So I only really felt complete when I was around him. I was attached to him. He had a piece of me. So it is so important that if you are a virgin, please keep it. It's a beautiful thing. Keep that sacred to you. Save it, because not only did it, mess up me emotionally, and I was young and I was battling with this at a young age, and it's just like I lost my virginity as a teen, and just imagine battling as a team, going through all of this, and then I was causing things upon myself just by losing my virginity. So if you have it, please, I say, continue to do not let curiosity overtake you. Stay strong and know that you are very valuable, and that's something that you cannot get back. So anyways, just by that touch of him taking that away from me, for years that went by, I felt incomplete, and I felt like that was going to be my husband, this, that, and the third. And it more so put me in a bad place mentally, but spiritually, because it was like I was tied to this person, and I was willing to fall repeatedly over and over, just in order to be around that person. So keep that in mind. Okay, so it really was so profound thinking about clothing. I didn't really, think about how, important it is, to not share your clothing because, in the world, I was that friend that was like, hey, I got something that'll look good with that. Hey, you should put this on. You should put this on. But not thinking it's just clothes. But now being in the church, I'm reading and I'm just like, what? Like, it was shocking to me. Clothing can carry your spirit. And it can be a release of a person's virtue. So it's just like, okay. So, wow, a person can really, get virtue just by my clothes. But when I think about it, looking back, and I'm not trying to put this on dudes, but however, when I was in high school, I'll say, not even just high school, it was this trend of wanting to wear your boyfriend, which I don't believe in, jacket or something that belonged to him. It was more so a thing, and I can honestly say when I received his hoodie, it felt like he was there with me. So it was like not even just the smell of the cologne, it was the fact that it was his, and I was not really thinking of the depth of it. I'm thinking this is just my boyfriend, hoodie, not really thinking that, wow, a person's virtue can be released. So in 2 Kings, I'm going to go to it, chapter 2, and it's verses 1 through 16. So I'm not going to read the whole thing, but pretty much Elijah requested a double portion of Elijah's spirit. Okay, so I'm going to read out of The Struggle is Real. And as I'm reading this, I feel like if you want to purchase, The Struggle is Real book, you can to follow along, and it's really helpful. I'll say, even though I'm reading out of it, it's helping me, and it's really enlightening me on areas that I didn't really look deep into, that to know that our 5 senses can play a huge role in the struggles we have today. So how to avoid not having these struggles is very important. So this book is very eye-opening, especially for us young people that's trying to live safe and feel that it's impossible, to live safe, or we always fall. And reading this book, it actually strengthened me, and it gave me, knowledge on how to live saved as a 24-year-old young woman. Okay, so if I can do it, you can do it too. But this is a very good book, and I encourage anyone who wants to purchase it to purchase it. So going back to the page, let me see. And it reads, notice, Elisha requested a double portion of Elijah's spirit. Notice the spirit did not come upon him until he had Elijah's mantle in his hand. And Jesus knew this woman had received something from him by touching him. And that's in Mark 5, chapter 5, 28, verse 28 through 30. So it's just like, not only can people receive our virtue from touching us, but sometimes we can only get our strength when we are back with the person who has taken a part of us and put it in them. Even spiritual information of our future can be revealed through our clothes. And that's in Acts chapter 21, verses 8 through 11. So, knowing that, okay, I can not only, struggle with a person touching me physically, but my clothing, can be a part of my fall spiritually. Me being on my cycle as a young woman, something that I cannot help, can, help me fall if I'm not aware of who I am at that particular time and where I'm at that particular time. So remember, it is very important to not go anywhere, not go anywhere because, we still have to go to stores and grocery shop and stuff like that. But learn how to separate yourself as a young woman when we're on, our cycle, because let's be real, the feeling, the sexual desires increase before and sometimes after, mostly after when we're on our cycle. And hormones, and if you play with yourself, then you pretty much are asking to fall. Remember, your period is not just speaking on what's going on in your body at that particular time, but it's also referring to what you need to be doing during that period of time. So, learn to separate yourself. And I'm not saying act like you some alien or whatnot, but, kind of give that time, learn yourself. It tells us to watch and pray. So in that time, watch how your body reacts, watch how you feel, watch what you want in that particular time, I'll say. Because, we are very vulnerable during that period of time in our life. So knowing that this was stood out to me, y'all. I am so, like, my mind just went, psh, reading this, because it's just like, wow, I've been I'm a young woman. I've been having a cycle for all of this time period. But knowing that, of course, I knew my hormones was some type of way, but not knowing that life is in the blood, like, I didn't really look at it spiritually. So it's just like, properly flush, the stools, and really take heed to how you dispose your sanitary napkins. Make sure it's covered, and you don't want that to be exposed to everyone. You don't want your blood out. In Leviticus chapter 17 and 11, I'm going to read it. And it reads, "For the life of the flesh is in the blood." So, being that life is in our blood, be careful on how, you carry yourself as a young woman, or, just a woman, period, a young lady, a teenager. Be mindful on how you carry yourself, especially during that time period, because, yeah, although we may look at it as, oh, it's natural, it's just in our nature to have a cycle, but a lot of things can take place spiritually if we're not mindful of the things. So, remember, it's not a crime to go out in public and to be around people, but just be aware that around that time period, your hormones are very, they'll lead you to a road of destruction. Your sexual desires will increase. Curiosity will kick in. So, be mindful of that. And as I said before, properly flush the stool. You're supposed to always, be careful on how you leave things, but really, really, look around and make sure everything is, A1, I'll say. So we know that in our blood, life dwells there. So we don't want to, have it out in the open. Make sure it's closed and secure, and, try to, I'll say, to encourage someone with that. As a young woman, I'm 24, and everything in my body works. And I know I be real with myself, because sometimes we can sit up here and lie to ourselves because we don't want to believe that we have some things in us, because I'm saved, and you mean to tell me this stuff still dwell in me? But I know me. So I know in this time period, I know that I want to be catered to, I'll say. I know that I'm going to say that I remember, okay, I was on my cycle, and I believe I was cramping really bad at this particular time. And although, sex is not on my mind, I'm not going to, do that, especially not in that time period. So it's just like, I wanted to be catered to. My emotions was stirred up. I was an unstable creature at that particular time in my life, because my hormones wanted something that was not good for me. So please be mindful of yourself. Like, I'm going to be real with myself. Okay, I see how I am. Maybe I need to shut myself out. Maybe this can be me and God time, even the more, because I know that, I'm a little weak right now. I know I'm a little vulnerable right now. So let me switch up. This time of the month, I'm going to make myself busy with this, because I know that, this time period, I'm a little shaky. I'm a little unstable in my emotions, and my hormones, they're a little off right now. So while I'm going through this period of time, I'm not going to even provoke myself or provoke anything in my flesh to be woke up. So I'll say keep that in mind. Um, Also, like, I noticed, like, when you're not praying how you're supposed to and not being in God's presence, it is easier to fall. Temptation is on 100. And if you're not prayed up, you're not really in a fighting, you're not fighting back. You're weak. So I'll say, if you're not in God's presence at that particular time in your life, try to avoid things, because as I said before, touching can play a big role in the struggles we have today. So if you're not prayed up, you are carnal. Your mind is carnal. So you're not really looking at things, how they should in most cases. So, if you have to sometimes wave and keep it going because that's going to protect you in that time being, do just that. Because at the end of the day, it is easy to fall when you're not prayed up. A lot of things happen during that time period. So I'll say you can make it. And just remember that our five senses plays a huge role in our struggles that we have today. And just me being here for 2 years, being saved for 2 years and a couple months, I can say when I first came in, I did not know everything. But as I'm here, I'm, learning more on things on how to be saved. And I can say the Struggle is Real book, I heard things and, I seen things and I knew already right from wrong. But to know the depth of what our five senses can play in our struggle is really important. It helped me to realize, okay, in order for you to be saved, look at what you're doing and this may cause this. Like, literally, it helps me break down and eliminate things from my walk. So I know it can help you as well. So, I'm always hearing it's hard, young, being saved, young and being saved. But I can say that you can make it. You can make it. Nothing is impossible. Like, the impossible is for God to do, but being saved is not impossible. It may be a struggle. I'm not going to say you're not going to have any fights, moments in your life you don't know what's going on. But at the end of the day, you can make it. Speaking on Touchy, being in the world, I really didn't think too much of it, but I used to be like, I ain't finna let everybody pray for me. And knowing the things now spiritually, I'm definitely not finna let everybody just up and lay hands on me because, I don't want the worst to happen. You get what I'm saying? Like, it is important that, we carry ourselves as young women a certain way and to know that even though a hug and stuff, listen, I hug my brothers, but I ain't around here locking up and this, that, and the third. Like, no, it is important that we carry ourselves as such, as young women, to be mindful of things. Yes, a hug is not a sin, but if you know that you feel some type of way about a person and you're not in God's presence, and as I said before, that a person can touch one part of your body and another part can feel it, listen, keep that in mind. Be real with yourself and get before God, I'll say, because our five senses, they're a little slick. And with our struggles, you don't really think too deep into it, because I didn't. I can vouch for myself. But now knowing that I can't see everything, because, that may wake up something in me, because I wasn't always saved. I lived in the world for a good amount of time. So I know that I don't need to see certain things. I know that I can't hear certain things. Certain music, I used to listen to in the world provoke things in my flesh. So I don't want to, put myself in that predicament to be listening to those lyrics, because, hearing is another way to enter you, and it can affect your spiritual walk. So also knowing, touch, we're talking about touch. So be mindful of what you touch and be mindful for what touch you. And also with the clothing, be mindful of that, your spirit sometimes lies in your clothing, and that sometimes virtue can be released to another person just by your clothing. So keep all of that in mind, that if you want to be saved, you can make it. Don't touch everything, and don't let everything touch you. So in my conclusion, I'm going to say you can make it. I always say that, and just just stick through it. Whatever you're doing, if you fail, get up. You can make it. I also want to say that my Facebook is open. My name is Alexis Middlebrooks. I have 2 Facebooks, but you're open to inbox either or. If you want advice or if you just want somebody to talk to, I'm here. You can reach out to me. And I hope everyone have a blessed day and enjoy the rest of their day.